So this weekend I went out to see the Spider-Man Homecoming movie. Thought I'd give you guys a review, and I'll try to do it with as little spoilers as possible. Now this movie, and whether or not you like it or don't like it, is largely going to come down to your expectations. If you're going into this movie expecting to see full-grown and polished Spider-Man, you're going to be disappointed. In this movie, Peter Parker is a kid, a 15-year-old kid that's still in high school, still goofy, still making mistakes, still getting in trouble, and still basically doesn't have a grasp on what he's doing. And I found this to be kind of a similar criticism across the board from people that saw it, that didn't say they hated it, they just expected to see a little more out of the character in this movie. But this is the MCU starting at the beginning of Spider-Man's career.
I gotta know, what's your MO? What gets you out of that twin bed in the morning?
Because I've been me my whole life, and I've had these powers for 6 months.
Now if you ever read the comics, especially the older ones, when he first got his powers, yeah, he could do a lot of amazing things, but he couldn't do them all amazingly well. And he was basically still learning, getting comfortable with his powers. Now according to the timeline of the MCU, back during the Civil War movie, he had only had his powers for about 6 months. Now I figure at the time of this movie, this was probably a little after the Civil War event, so if we're going to be charitable, let's say he's had his powers a full 8 months. That is not enough time for you to be a polished superhero. Also, we really need to look at the name of the movie. It was Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, I don't know of any other context of the word homecoming in the MCU universe, so I naturally assumed it was going to spend most of its time focusing on him in high school right around that time and that age and being inexperienced. The title kind of lends itself to that. So I wasn't expecting any conflict that he was going to have in the movie with the Vulture to be earth-shattering, or even that big of a deal as far as the overall Marvel Cinematic Universe story. So no, I didn't expect any Thanos references. Also, if you look at his appearance in Civil War, you will clearly see that, yes, he did very well against the other combatants in this movie. But I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they never knew who he was in the first place. They didn't know his power set, how he fought, anything. So he caught them completely by surprise, off guard, and that's probably kind of what Tony Stark wanted. One thing about this movie is I laughed an awful lot. Tom Holland has great comedic timing, as does a lot of the other characters that he was cast with, and that really actually helped to make the movie a lot more enjoyable, considering the fact that, yeah, it was action there, but it wasn't anything that I hadn't seen from Spider-Man before. And speaking of that, there's been like, what, 6 Spider-Man movies now? By now, we all know his power set. We all know what he can do. I really don't think there's going to be too much he's going to be able to do that's going to surprise us. So at this point, it's going to be about the story. It's going to be about the villain. It's going to be about how they put the movie together and the pacing. So that's kind of what I was looking at. And I like the pacing of this movie, actually. As far as standout performances, I really enjoyed, in the scenes that she was in, the performance of Zendaya. I think I'm pronouncing her name correctly. She plays MJ in the movie. I thought that it was a refreshing take on the character. Now, in the comic books, MJ has always been sort of a smart ass anyway. And that's pretty much what she gave you here. But she was also very intelligent. And, you know, I can definitely see later on how as that relationship between her and Parker begins to grow, we're going to get a lot of funny scenes out of those two because she loves to bust his balls. Michael Keaton did pretty good too. I don't really think he had a whole lot to worry about though. I mean, as far as I was always concerned, the Vulture to me always seemed like somewhat of a one-dimensional character. He was just a one gimmick dude. He had wings, he could fly. And I know that sometime later on after the character was created, they try to flesh out his character a little more. But for me, he just never was a villain that I considered to be top tier. So Michael Keaton did a pretty good job, and the script did a pretty good job of giving him some sort of a motivation that got you somewhat invested in what he was doing. Because I got to be honest with you, some of the things he was saying in the movie, I actually agreed with. I wonder if that makes me a villain. And of course, Jacob Batalon as Ned Leeds. Ned Leeds in the comic books actually is the Hobgoblin. And I don't know if they're going to go in that direction with that character later on, but he played a perfect sideman to Tom Holland's Peter Parker. Now, as far as the action in the movie, I would say it was a pretty standard fare. I've seen all of the Spider-Man movies, and nothing that he did in this movie, none of the stunts in this movie really made me go wow. As a matter of fact, I was talking to my brother Napalm, shout out to Napalm, and he was pretty much saying the same thing. There was nothing in here that Spider-Man did that made me go wow, but I think that also has a lot to do with the fact that I've seen all of the Spider-Man movies. Like, I know what he can do and what he can't do. And speaking of that, it was very noticeable to me about this movie that there was no mention of him having a spider sense. And I don't know if that means that later on, as the series progresses, he evolves that ability, but it was very noticeable, especially for people that A, have watched all the Spider-Man movies, and B, have, well, read the Spider-Man comic books. So I'm wondering if the MCU was keeping that out on purpose, or if they're going to develop it later. I was really happy that they didn't really have a lot of Tony Stark in this movie, because I think that would have shifted the focus off of Tom Holland, but they had just enough of Iron Man in the movie where it helped to develop Peter's character rather than hinder it or overshadow it. So that was a good decision on behalf of the directors. Now, as far as the after credit scene goes, I know there's still some people that probably haven't seen the movie, so I'm not going to reveal what that was. I wasn't that big of a fan of it. I think the reason it was that way is because as far as the story goes, I don't think it had that big of an impact overall on the MCU overall storyline. So I don't think they really felt the need to give us a big teaser into the larger story. But I did enjoy the movie. I did have a good time. I was entertained by it, and I strongly suggest that you go and check it out. Keep your expectations in context to the character, to his place in the MCU right now, and you should enjoy the movie as well. Well, that's all for me today, Reapers. If you enjoyed this video and you're new to this channel and would like to be a part of the Legion, please like, share, and subscribe to the Reaper Legion Network and help our small community become a larger community. And as always, please, geek responsibly.